The room is full of people. There is music. There is laughter. Someone is telling a story at the other end of the table, and everyone leans in. You are holding a drink you have not touched. You are nodding at the right moments. You are smiling when it seems appropriate. And you are completely, utterly alone. Not physically. Physically, you are surrounded. But something in your chest, something you do not have a word for, is standing at a great distance from everyone in the room, watching through glass. Because you remember a time when it was different. You remember being younger and feeling genuinely seen. You remember friendships that felt like home. But somewhere between then and now, something shifted. And the older you get, the harder it becomes to shake the feeling that no one really knows you, that the people who love you love a version of you, that the real you, the complicated, exhausted, searching you, sits alone in a room that no one else can enter. This is not a video about being an introvert. This is not a video about social anxiety or how to make friends as an adult. This is not a video about loneliness as a mental health problem to be solved. This is a video about something the Bible has been trying to tell us for 3,000 years, that the loneliness you feel as you grow up is not a sign that something is broken. It is a sign that something is working. There is a reason the wisest man who ever lived, a man who had more wealth, more influence, more human connection than anyone in his generation, spent the final years of his life writing about emptiness. We will get to him, but not yet. First, let us go to a desert. His name is Elijah, and by every measure available to the ancient world, he has just had the greatest day of his professional life. He has stood alone on a mountain before 850 false prophets. He has called down fire from heaven in front of an entire nation. He has prayed for rain after 3 years of drought, and the sky, which had been sealed shut like a tomb, cracked open and poured. And then he runs. Not because a foreign army found him, not because the people turned against him, because one woman sent him a message. Queen Jezebel, furious at the death of her prophets, sent Elijah a single sentence: "By tomorrow at this time you will be dead." And Elijah, who had just faced 850 men and a drought and the silence of heaven, read that message, stood up, and ran into the wilderness alone. He sat down under a juniper tree, and he said, and the text gives us his exact words, "It is enough. Lord, take away my life. I am no better than my fathers." You need to understand what you are looking at here. This is not a weak man having a bad day. This is the greatest prophet alive, at the peak of his powers, collapsing under a desert bush and asking God to let him die. Because he was alone. Because after everything, after the fire, after the rain, after the miracle, he looked around and there was no one beside him who truly understood what had just happened. And here is what God does not do. God does not appear in thunder. God does not rebuke him. God sends an angel. The angel touches him on the shoulder and says, "Arise and eat." A cake baked on coals, a jar of water, that is all. The most tender, ordinary human moment in the entire story. God fed him before he spoke to him, because Elijah did not need a sermon. He needed to know he was not invisible. Pay attention to this, because the same pattern will appear again. David knew it too. The man after God's own heart, the king who wrote more songs than any person in Scripture, sat in a cave one afternoon and wrote a psalm you may have never read. It is called Psalm 142. And it is not a triumphant psalm. It is not the David of Goliath or the David of the battlefield. It is the David who looks around and writes, I look to the right and watch, but there is none who takes notice of me. No refuge remains to me. No one cares for my soul. No one cares for my soul. Think about that sentence. Not, no one likes me. Not, I have no friends. But there is not a single person in my world right now who cares for the part of me that actually matters. You have written that message before. Maybe not on paper, maybe not in a psalm, but you have felt it. That particular species of loneliness that hits you not when you are physically isolated, but when you are surrounded by people who know your name and do not know you. The Hebrew word in Psalm 22, a psalm David also wrote, is yachid, meaning solitary one, the only one of its kind. It is the same word used for an only child. David did not just feel lonely, he felt like the last of his kind. And here is the first thing the Bible is showing us. This loneliness is not random. It is not a personality flaw. It tracks with something specific. The more clearly you see, the harder it becomes to find people who see it with you. Elijah saw what was happening to Israel when everyone else had gone blind. David understood God in a way his generation did not, and both of them paid for that depth with isolation, not because they were failures, because they were further along. Both Elijah and David were not lonely because they had failed. They were lonely because they had grown. The further you travel into maturity, into genuine understanding, into depth of soul, the smaller the population of people who can meet you there. That is not discouragement. That is diagnosis. And the Bible is full of it. If this is landing for you, if you have ever felt like the lonelier you get, the more you suspect it might be permanent. Stay with this video, because we are about to go somewhere that changes the frame entirely. And if this is the kind of content that speaks to something real in you, consider subscribing. There are more of these coming. Hit the bell so you do not miss them. Now, let us talk about the man who had every reason not to be lonely, and was anyway. His name is Paul, and by the time we meet him in his final letter, he is old. He is sitting in a Roman prison, not the loose house arrest of his earlier letters, but a proper dungeon, cold, probably damp, the kind of place the empire put people it intended to forget. He is writing to his closest friend, Timothy, and in what scholars believe is the last letter Paul ever wrote, he says this: "At my first defense, no one came to stand by me. All deserted me. All deserted me." This is the man who planted churches across 3 continents. This is the man whose letters became scripture. This is the man who once said, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And here, at the end of his life, at the moment that mattered most, his trial, his defense, the moment when his life was formally on the line, he looked to his left and his right, and there was no one there. Ecclesiastes says, 2 are better than 1. Paul knew that better than anyone. He had traveled with companions his whole ministry: Barnabas, Silas, Luke, Timothy. He had never been designed for solo work, and at the end, he was alone anyway. Here is the part nobody tells you. The older you get, the harder it becomes to find people who will stay. Not because people are cruel, not because you are unlovable, but because life scatters. People move, people marry, people get busy and exhausted and absorbed in worlds of their own making. The connections that felt permanent in your 20s begin slowly to thin. And what replaces them, if you are lucky, are deeper relationships, but fewer of them, much fewer. This is not failure. This is the mathematics of maturity. The Greek word for alone, monos, appears in the Garden of Gethsemane. After Jesus asks his disciples to stay awake and pray with him, he returns and finds them asleep. Not once, 3 times. And in that moment, the most important night in human history, the night the weight of the world's sin is descending on a single person, Jesus is, in the fullest human sense, alone, not abandoned by God. The relationship with the Father holds. But in terms of human companionship, in terms of having someone beside you who truly grasps what you are facing, he had no one. He was, in that moment, unreachable by the people who loved him most. And still he prayed, and still he went. Stay with me, because this is where it gets remarkable. The loneliness of Jesus in Gethsemane was not incidental. It was not a mistake the disciples made that ruined the evening. It was, in some sense, necessary. Because what Jesus was carrying in that garden, what he was about to do, was something no human being could have shared with him, even if they had stayed awake. The weight was his alone. The work was his alone. The cup was his. And that is the second thing the Bible is showing us. There are seasons of your life, seasons of calling, of growth, of becoming, that no one else can enter with you. Not because you have driven them away, but because the work being done in you is yours, and it can only be done in the quiet. Now, the wisest man who ever lived, his name is Solomon, son of David, builder of the temple, the man to whom God appeared twice, not once, twice, and said, "Ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you." Solomon asked for wisdom, and God gave it, along with everything else: wealth, fame, international influence, 1,000 relationships, 1,000. And here is what Solomon wrote near the end of his life in the book we call Ecclesiastes. Chapter 4, verse 8. There is one alone, and there is not a second. He has neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all his toil. His eyes are never satisfied with riches. So he asks, "For whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure?" The Hebrew word there, badad, the same word used in Lamentations to describe a city sitting in desolation, means more than alone. It means cut off. It means the kind of aloneness that is not just physical but existential. A person who is present and yet absent from everything around them. Solomon had seen everything. He had built everything. He had known more people, read more books, written more songs, tasted more food, governed more land than any person in his generation. And at the end of it, he sat down and wrote, "What was it all for, if there is no one beside me who truly knows what I was doing?" This is not the complaint of a failure. This is the confession of a man who grew so deep that the surface world could no longer hold him. Augustine of Hippo, writing centuries later in his Confessions, described this exact hunger, the hunger of a heart that has tried everything the world offers and found it insufficient. He called it a restlessness that cannot be cured by anything human, a longing for something no relationship can permanently satisfy. Augustine said that every other hunger, for connection, for belonging, for being known, is that deeper hunger wearing a different face, which means the loneliness you feel as you grow up is not, at its root, a social problem. It is a spiritual one. You are not lonely because you have failed to build the right relationships. You are lonely because you are a soul. And souls are designed for a kind of intimacy that only God can fully provide. Other people can carry part of it. A good marriage carries part of it. A deep friendship carries part of it. A genuine community carries part of it. But none of them can carry all of it. And here is the turn, the thing that changes everything. God met Elijah under a juniper tree and brought him bread. God met David in a cave and became his refuge when every human refuge had closed. God met Paul in a Roman prison and said in the same letter where Paul described his abandonment, "The Lord stood by me and strengthened me." God met Solomon in his emptiness with the truth, the gift of honest vision, the grace to name the void without drowning in it. And God met Jesus in a garden, not by sending angels to hold his hand, but by letting him walk through the loneliness all the way to the other side of it, so that no one who has ever felt alone in the dark would be able to say that God does not understand. He does not just understand it. He has been there. So let me leave you with three things. The first, your loneliness is not evidence that something is wrong with you. Every person in this video, Elijah, David, Paul, Solomon, Jesus, was lonely at one of the highest points of their life. Loneliness is not the opposite of flourishing. In the Bible, it often accompanies it. The second, depth costs something. The further you grow, in faith, in self-awareness, in understanding, the smaller the population of people who can fully meet you there. This is not a flaw in the design. This is the design. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are becoming. And becoming sometimes happens in the quiet, in the in-between, in the seasons when it feels like no one quite sees you yet. The third, and this is the one I want you to carry with you. Every person in this video who cried out in their loneliness, God answered. Not always immediately, not always the way they expected. But he answered. Elijah got bread, David got a psalm, Paul got strength, Solomon got the grace to name the void honestly. And Jesus got the other side of the cross, which means that the loneliness that felt like the end was, in fact, the beginning of everything. You are not alone in your loneliness. That is not wordplay. That is theology. The God who made you has felt what you feel. He does not look at you from a distance. He comes under the juniper tree. He sits with you in the cave. He stands with you in the courtroom when everyone else has gone home. Your soul is not too deep for company. It is exactly deep enough for the only one who was always meant to fill it.